We are very excited to have you all. Whichever order you like. When you pull up over there. See you again. Hey, Airtime, can you set the model and find a nice spot up here for us to sit? I can hear you. Come on down.
Everyone can come in.
Yes, please. Welcome, folks.
If you guys want to see updated questions, look on that computer.
Wait, guys, questions?
Well, so I need
It's gonna be great.
but they're different. So the first
Let's get started. You guys are first. How about like this? Oh, no worries. We're not filling up the whole auditorium, so I didn't bother. Too far away, join us. Am I going up? Grab myself a letter. Well, if you want to go to school,
And he gets it. Like, as in,
for Middle East and North Africa Day. I'm Sarah, this is Gross, and today we have a student panel that'll be answering some questions about their experiences. If you have any questions that you would like to ask the panelists, you can scan the QR code here, and or you can just raise your hand and we'll have mic runners running through to take your questions. For those watching on the live streams, there's also a link in the description to add a question. Please keep your questions thoughtful and respectful. But without further ado, we're going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So if you guys could just say your names, what grade you're in, how you identify, and what your favorite Middle Eastern or North African food is. We have lists.
Yeah. Sorry. Oh, shit. Okay. Hi, my name is Luke. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm a senior. I identify as Armenian American, and my favorite Middle Eastern food would probably be lahmacun or çiğ köfte, which is like a ground raw beef or raw meat dish. So,
My name is Nadim Sauli. I am a junior. I identify as Lebanese Palestinian American. And I would say my favorite Middle Eastern food is knefe, and it's like a Palestinian dessert. It's really good.
Hello or assalamu alaikum. My name is Ali. I identify as Egyptian American, and my favorite Middle Eastern food would be koshari.
Hi, my name is Lena. I identify as Moroccan, and my favorite North African food is couscous.
Hi, my name is Malika. I'm a junior. I am Iranian American, or some say Persian. My favorite food, which is actually really frowned upon, is khoresh de karafs, which is like celery soup and chicken.
That's a good one. I'm Amira. I'm Iranian American, and my favorite Middle Eastern food is probably fesenjoon.
Hi, I'm Ava. I'm Lebanese, and my favorite Middle Eastern food is probably kibbeh nai.
Hey, I'm Purusha. I'm Iranian American. My favorite food is probably kebabs.
I'm Nave. I'm a junior. I identify as Israeli Yemenite American, and my favorite food is kubane.
Hello, I'm Sarper. I use he, him pronouns, and I identify as Turkish. My favorite food is probably çiğ köfte.
Hi, my name is Angelina. I use she, her pronouns. I identify as Syrian, and my favorite food is kibisa farjaliyah.
Hi, I'm Nadav Lowy. I use the he, him pronouns, and I identify as Israeli American. And my favorite Middle Eastern food would probably be falafel.
Hi, I'm John. I use he, him pronouns and identify as Syrian. And my favorite Middle Eastern dish has to be grape leaves.
All right, so how does your specific country or countries of origin factor into how you personally identify?
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that question? Sorry.
Yeah, so just like how does your identity like impact you? Yeah. If you want to just like you.
Okay. Being Israeli, like ties like a lot to my religion, and so with my family and like every night and every week, like there's a big ties to that, and like all the dinners and all like the conversations are kind of oriented into a way of like where we're from and like what like my grandparents have been through and stuff like that.
I don't necessarily know if this is like Middle Eastern, but what my family does every Friday is that we go for Friday prayer, and that's usually like a Muslim thing. Yeah, that's kind of like a tradition, I guess.
Yeah, also like my family, we have like a tradition that's like from Morocco is that every Friday we eat like this specific dish, couscous. Every Friday it's like the whole family, and sometimes like family friends come in. It's like a big thing.
I think with me being a Syrian, I think a lot of people kind of associate that with the war that's been going on recently, and I kind of try to veer away from that, and I try to like teach people about the culture and about the language and like the history of the country rather than um, like what's going on right now, because people are just focusing on the destruction and not really the beauty of the country.
Uh, Personally, like with my ethnic identity, I hold that very dearly, but to me, it also comes with like a lot of unknowns because with being Armenian American, not a lot of people know that it actually exists. So I'm really like always a confusion to people because um, as much as people like to assume people's ethnic backgrounds and racial backgrounds, they can never really guess. And I always usually get that I'm Italian, which is very false. Um, but um, yeah, and then there's also like internally, I guess, kind of what I struggle with is like, am I really Middle Eastern? Because I feel like Armenia shares a lot of the same um, like foods and like celebrations and a lot of the same cultural aspects as a lot of Middle Eastern places, but there's still like really big differences. Like Armenia is very, 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 very Christian. Personally, I don't really identify as, or I mean, my family is Apostolic Orthodox, but personally, I'm not very religious. But growing up, I always was kind of told that I'm not Middle Eastern and that I should kind of use Middle Eastern as like a dampener to people's confusion and just like not say that I'm Armenian and just say that I'm Middle Eastern, which kind of like it's not very healthy because then that kind of leads to like me being confused on like who I actually am and like the whole racial umbrella thing, because personally I don't identify with the racial umbrella. I just kind of say I'm Armenian American and that's kind of it, because your country of origin is like your entire story and that's where you're from. But yeah, for me it's caused a lot of confusion, just personally and in like my social life. Um, but it is something that I like hold really close to me and that I find really important and I like to cherish and would like to like get to know more, because personally I still am not super connected, and so isn't my family through like personal reasons. But yeah.
What I like to do is I like to like eliminate stereotypes. So like sometimes you'd get from non-Middle Eastern people like, hey, do you guys ride camels in your country? And it's like, no, we don't. Like, for example, in Syria, we used to have before the war, really good middle class, a mix of wealthy people. It wasn't just everyone's impoverished waiting for the lovely chance to come to America. No, people were happy where they were and, were forced out of their country because of this war.
I think as a Palestinian Lebanese American, I think there's a lot of, like, as some people have said, there's a lot of stigma and ideals about generally the Middle East too, and I think it's important, and I feel it's a responsibility. I think we have to expose people to culture, to the people, to the music, to the food, because there's a lot more than these ideals that like a lot of news media and all that will like portray upon us. But yeah.
Kind of connecting to Nadim's point, I think being Iranian, I kind of I'm wary of what I kind of present as, because I don't want to confirm people's stereotypes, or I wouldn't really call it suspicions maybe. So that like kind of affects how I engage with politics and just discussions about ethnicity and culture.
Yeah, also like being Moroccan, I kind of like struggle with like figuring out if I'm like Arab or not, cuz like in that country like some people are like, "Oh, we're Arab," and the others are like, "Oh no, we're not Arab." So we're kind of like in the middle struggling. When I was in Morocco, like I didn't really care. I kind of just like it was like, "Oh, I'm Moroccan. It doesn't matter." But like when I'm out of Morocco, a lot of people ask like, "Well, what are you like outside of Moroccan? Like what's your race and stuff?" That's like when I struggle, cuz it's not really like defined, and like yeah, like sometimes you just like don't know who you are.
So same thing with John. I try to like eliminate stereotypes. When I moved here, when I was like 10, 11, I would get a lot of comments like, "Did you ride to school with a camel? Do you live in a pyramid?" That was a lot. But no, like if you look at Egypt right now, Egypt is the center of the Middle East. Like it's not all poverty. So I definitely try to eliminate these stereotypes with dialogue, with conversations with other people, and like organizing this event, right?
And I think even like discussing about identity and this idea of like the Middle East, like the term Middle East is created by the British Empire. So I think like it's multiple lands of multiple peoples, and I think understanding how we're very connected yet divided. We have differences and similarities in our cultures, and I think like understanding that is definitely something that we will see in like the future, I hope.
All right, so our next question is, how have you balanced both your culture and identity and your experiences living in the U.S. and attending a U.S. school? And if you haven't had to balance that, you can also talk about that experience.
So I'm gonna talk about like sacrifices, and that goes back to like the Friday prayer thing. Usually in Egypt, I would go every single Friday prayer, but now that we have school on Friday and like around that time too, I can't. So definitely, it's been hard, like all like these past 6 years, like assimilating into that. I've been trying to maybe like open like a Friday prayer here. It's been pretty hard. So yeah, definitely having some trouble assimilating. But, hopefully all goes well.
My family is one second. Okay, my family they're pretty cool about like keeping the culture in my house is very similar to what it is like in Turkey. So if I'm in my house, I feel very like I could be in Turkey, living in Turkey, and it feels the same. A lot of most of my family is still in Turkey, so all the conversations we have about them, about like everything, is still pretty. It feels like it could be in Turkey. So I think that helps. So outside of my house, I have American culture or like just not Turkish culture, and then in my house, it is Turkish culture. So I think that helps keep it a good balance. I like it a lot.
I would have to agree. So when I'm like in my house, we speak Arabic all the time. There's no English at all, and it kind of feels like I'm in Syria when I'm in my own house, and we never have like any American food. It's always Syrian food. My grandma is like the best cook ever, and I feel like coming out of my household, it's kind of a big adjustment, just kind of changing the mindset, because I feel like it's very different, kind of just little things. Like, this is a big thing, but language, when I first came here, I would like always mess up like different words. Like I would talk half English, half Arabic to my friends, and they would be like super confused. So that was definitely a big adjustment.
I think, well, for my family, it's a little, our situation is like a little unique because we don't really have a ton of ties in Iran, because the reason my family had to leave was just due to religious persecution. So just we have no connections back there whatsoever. And like no one has been back since before the 80s. But I would say my grandparents definitely like do try to like keep the culture like going, and like my grandparents still speak like Farsi all the time, and like and they like cook Persian food all the time, but like definitely growing up I did try to like push that away a little bit because it was kind of seen as like just like it would just kind of make me like stick out, and I didn't like that, which was like, and now like it kind of makes me sad that like I didn't like take advantage of like learning Farsi when I was little, because like I used to understand it, but then I would get embarrassed to speak it, and then I forgot it. So, yeah.
Yeah, also like, cause basically I moved here from Morocco when I was 11, so I kind of like still have the culture with me, and basically like I kind of turned into like kind of like two people. So in Morocco, I mean in my house, like it's like Morocco basically. Like even like the TV shows and we watch are also like Moroccan, and we have like a Moroccan TV channel and stuff, and like we barely speak English at home. Like it's not a thing, but like when I come out, like at first when I moved here, it was like kind of it's like hard to like fit in right away because of like the different ideas that I had versus the ideas that others had that grew up here. But like I learned to kind of like learn from both cultures at once. So I kind of like get along with Moroccans in the Moroccan way, and I get along with people that grew up here the way they grew up here.
Do you want to go, John? This is kind of similar to Amira, but my family has not and cannot go back to Lebanon right now. And I think for my mom, she doesn't want me to just completely not forget about where we're from, but just like, I think she just wants to keep it, in mind. And so we go to church that's all in Arabic, and everybody there, it's a really small community in Lawrence, and everyone knows everyone, and we all know the priests, and it's like nice to have that. And they have like little parties and stuff like that. But we also, like, my mom cooks all the time, like Middle Eastern food, and I think not having like the family trips back to Lebanon is like, I think it's not, I've only been able to see a certain amount of where my family is from pictures or for whatever stories. But so I think a lot of it is like struggling to hold on to the parts of it that I know and the parts of myself that I know. So, yeah.
My experiences are a bit different because, well, I'm Christian, and it's in Syria. It's a big minority. So I grew up in like a Catholic school. So I was like knew English, and I was born in the United States. So like I always used to come like back and forth because I had family here. So they are definitely a little bit different, but it's pretty much the same. We speak Arabic at home. We eat all Arabic food. My sister, we just started speaking English because my sister has really grown up here, basically. So we do speak a little bit English because that's all she really speaks. Even though she understands and speaks Arabic, she just prefers to speak English. But yeah, just little things like that make every experience different.
I'd say I kind of can agree and like connect with Ava and her experience. Since my grandpa had to flee his home in 1948, since my dad and my mom decided to move away from Lebanon after having a very, very dangerous experience in the 2000s, we haven't had that opportunity to go back. I mean, personally, like I really have like the urge, like I want to go, but my parents do not want me traveling. But it's like something I'm drawn to, and it's always like an urge in my mind.
I guess for me, I like really resonate with Amir and Ava. With my family, for the past like 3 generations, the majority of my family hasn't gone back to Armenia because of 1915 and the genocide. And so a lot of my family was actually born and raised in Syria, and my mother in Lebanon. But even then, everybody kind of moved out because of the war in the 60s and 70s in Lebanon, and just like aggressions and stuff starting in those countries. And so my parents just ended up fleeing like before everything all happened, but still kind of tied to that. So, and this is kind of from the Armenians that I've talked to, like, or like within my family, it feels like we've kind of been westernized because we haven't been back in so long, and our ties are really cut short. And for a lot of Armenians, they've kept really close ties, which I'm like really jealous of, because they still go to like AYF and they're still a part of like all of the Armenian communities. But like for myself, like my parents just never really enforced that on me. Like when I was younger, I went to Armenian school, and I used to be not fluent. I was 3, but like I used to know Armenian and understand it pretty well. But after I left and came to like NPS, I lost all of it. Like I can't speak anything, and I used to have moments where I would use both Armenian and English, but not to the extent with like what Angelina was talking about, where it's like just the language that is spoken at home, like 100%. Like it is spoken at home, but I never speak it. I can still fluently understand because it's like it's in there, but I've had a struggle with like kind of figuring out how closely tied I am and how closely tied I want to be. And I really want to be closely tied, but that's really hard when your parents are also not as closely tied as a lot of other Middle Eastern kids' parents are, especially due to like recency and like being other countries. Like my parents basically have almost a full American and Canadian like education. So all of those like experiences that like a lot of other parents have are not with them, and so it's been really hard for me to kind of connect, even though like I still see family like every month, and like we have so much food, and like my grandmother is also like an amazing cook, and I feel like that's really like Middle Eastern grandparents for some reason are like the best cooks in the world. Like they always know what you want and how to make it really good. Like my grandma's rice pilaf is like 6 sticks of butter, but it's so good. Like it's so unhealthy for you, but it's, and a lot of it is really unhealthy for you, but it's also just so fucking good. But like it's been really hard kind of like balancing my level of being Armenian, even though like I am fully Armenian and I paid $100 to take a test that told me I was 100% Armenian. So yeah, that's just been a really big struggle that I even I haven't found the answer to yet, and I don't think I ever will. But it's just a constant back and forth between like my current like Westernization and like my Armenian side and how close I should be connected to.
In terms of being westernized, I grew up in Egypt like my whole life, so like 11 years. And all these years I was in an American school. So you could say I easily assimilated here. However, like John and many other people here at home, we speak Arabic, we eat Egyptian food. There's nothing American in my house at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of connect to that. I'm an immigrant too. I came over a couple of years ago. I think the kind of back and forth you talked about is something I really feel like kind of, we still speak Farsi at home. I'm bi-triliterate, but I still don't, like there's a sizable Iranian community in Boston, but we're not very connected to them. It's more of a small circle, and I don't really have any family here. So it's kind of that back and forth.
All right, so what is one misconception about the Middle East or North Africa that you feel should be corrected? Oh, and just a reminder to the panelists to keep the mic close to your mouth because I hear we're having audio issues.
There is this misconception that like the Middle East has been, in war like its whole life. But if you think about it, like it's not. I don't think that it, like in Egypt, for example. I know like I mention Egypt a lot, but at least for like 60 years, 70 years, it's been thriving really, right? We've been having a few revolutions, sure, but in terms of like culture, in terms of that has been thriving for sure. So definitely, a lot of Americans here think that just because some people from the Middle East, it means that they're refugees or they're fleeing. But the only reason I came here is literally for like college, right? So yeah.
And I think also as well that we're all the same, because we're not. There are a plethora of different communities and countries that exist within the Middle East, and there's a huge conception that we all speak the same language, we all speak Arabic, we're all one religion, like we're all Muslim. It's not true. Like it really isn't. And like that's a huge issue, is that like people just assume, and it's the same for so many other minority groups. It's people just like to assume that there are these two big major factors about a group, and that just applies to everybody, which it's not true. And it's all on a personal, like base-to-base basis, like personal basis on like how people identify, what they grew up with their experiences. Like I speak Armenian and my family identifies as Christian. no Arabic is spoken in my country basically at all. Our second language is Russian, even though I don't really know Russian. But like, it's very like a lot of the countries are not what you expect them to be, and they're not. The Middle Eastern identity is just kind of this big umbrella term for just a bunch of different places, like countries that are in the same place and have shared experiences, but that doesn't mean that we're all the same, and that's been a huge issue, I think.
Yeah, the main misconception that I kind of want to talk about is that like we're all like intense and like we're all living in poverty and we're all just waiting for that chance to go to America and like finally live a good life where we have free speech and stuff like that. But like that's not, I mean, in my case at least, I could have my family and I could have gone to America anytime we wanted, you know. But we lived a happy life, a comfortable life. You know, my quality of life hasn't really changed from now to Syria, which like speaks to how those misconceptions lead you to think that it's like, oh, that it's always been a war-torn place, with like no future and no hope for anything, which is, you know, very untrue.
Yeah, like also like a misconception about Morocco is like it's all sand, desert, and like all our houses are like Patrick the Star. It's really not. Like, we like whenever I tell someone I'm from there, they're like, "Isn't it so hot in there? Like such like it's in a desert." I'm like, "No, literally, I live like in." Literally, the weather there like so much better than here. I don't like the cold at all, but yeah, and also like, um, everyone's like, oh, like isn't like the laws and there like kind of strict and like it's not like open-minded. I'm like that's literally like not true. Like it's like here like every region has like its different ways of living and there's no like one specific way of living.
As Lena mentioned, usually Americans think that like Western ideology is the right ideology, right? That if you don't follow that ideology, you're wrong. But as she said, we have our own ideas that maybe some Westerners might not accept, but it's our culture, right? We have our differences, and that's how the world is. So yeah. And also, I want to mention something. Egyptian. So in terms of the religion thing, Egyptian Muslims here are actually a minority. Most Egyptians here are Christian, so definitely like the idea that every single person in the Middle East is Muslim is super, super wrong. The three Abrahamic religions literally started in the Middle East, so there has to be some sort of diversity.
Another thing I wanted to talk about was the stereotype about women in Islam, and I think first of all, like everyone thinks that you're required to wear a hijab. No, that hasn't like been a thing in like most countries. Like if you go to Saudi Arabia, obviously you're gonna see a lot of women in hijabs. Like it's very enforced there, but that doesn't mean that it's the same in every other country. You're really given a choice about that in like almost every country in the Middle East, and also women's rights in the Middle East. Again, if you don't look at like extreme countries like Saudi Arabia, you're gonna see that most countries like give like full rights to their women just as much as the men.
I just wanted to add on the list of misconceptions. This applies to many languages, but there's this like idea that like Arabic. I mean, I don't speak Arabic, but people always are saying like, oh, it sounds like very like angry. People are very expressionate when speaking Arabic, but it's not. I don't know. When I listen to my parents speak and I hear it around me and stuff, I don't know. These ideas of like this of it being angry is kind of like something. It's like I don't know where it like comes from, and I question like why this idea exists. And also talking about like I don't know, like the Middle East. Oh, it's all desert and stuff. I mean, talking about Lebanon, there's not a mile of desert in that country, so yeah.
Also, another misconception is that, as Angelina said, the hijab is forced in Saudi Arabia. However, what Saudi Arabia is doing in the name of Islam is not Islam. Islam is definitely not that, but sadly, a lot of people here think that because a country acts in the name of religion, then that religion is like that. But super wrong. Sure, Islam talks about modesty for both genders, but also doesn't force it, right? It's not like, oh, you don't wear hijab, you're going to hell. right? It's not like that. Yeah.
This is kind of similar to the Lebanon comment before, but I think separate from the desert, I think a lot of people think that if you're talking about, Beirut or like the cities or any type of like civilization that's there, it's like, oh, it's covered in like bullet holes and it's like gross and it's underdeveloped and there's nothing there. Like, no, like I have family who live like up in the mountains and it's absolutely beautiful there and it's untouched and it's wonderful. And that's really beautiful, but there's also like parts of Lebanon that are like very city-ish like ours, and like it's not just what you would assume when you hear it. And I think you look up on Google Images, I think this goes for a lot of cities everywhere, but like it's not, like you kind of gotta see what's out there. I mean,
Yeah, I'd just like to add in, like, what you see in the movies really isn't true. Like that, yellow filter, and it's like all these war-torn gray buildings all made of cement. Like it's not true. I know. I mean, like, it's like, for example, if we're talking about like Beirut and stuff, like, I mean, if you look on like Instagram pages, just like look up Beirut pictures and stuff. It's the opposite of that. It's a very like colorful city. There's a lot of like plants and stuff. There's a lot of like, it's very lively, and it used to be called, the Paris of the Middle East. It used to be a very, very beautiful city, but obviously there was a civil war there that happened, but now it's still constructing together still, but it's not this war-torn, like, oh, very, very dangerous,
Yeah, building off of what Luke actually said kind of a while ago about how like the Middle East isn't monogamous. I think that's why it's important that there are like places like this where there are like different cultures coming together, because even in the Middle East there's a lot of conflicts going on between different countries. So places where people can like come together and talk about their commonalities is very important.
Yeah, and also like the language, like trust me, a lot of people thought like all Middle East only like speaks like one language. Like there's a lot of languages, and also like Arabic is like so different like in different countries. It's not like a different accent. Literally, also different words too. Especially like concerning me, like Moroccan's like Arabic is like so different from the rest. Literally, nobody understands what we're saying, but like yeah, like there's different stuff and like Arab.
I would be like speaking with Lena, and then like I would think she's like having a stroke, right? With her Arabic, right? I also wanted to mention the fact that like Beirut like is a party city. Like literally, it's like the Los Angeles of the Middle East. So definitely the misconception that it's like war torn, absolutely not. People party there every day.
Beirut, also just to touch on what Ali said before, the economic crisis they had, like, I want to say at the start of the pandemic, it was like, I think, top 3 or 4 cities most expensive to live in the world. So like, again, just to add to the misconception that like, we're all like living in huts and stuff like that.
So our final question before we move on to the audience being a part of your culture in general.
The food is so good. Like that's literally why I'm proud of being Arab. Like the food. Like I don't care about anything else. It's just the food's the best. And maybe the clothing. I mean, it's pretty, but food for sure.
I think we can all agree the music is top tier. I think it was the year COVID first happened, and this was on Zoom. People were playing some pretty good songs, and even like across different languages. It's not just in Arabic or in Farsi. There's so many. I don't know. It has a good groove to it.
Mine is like the weddings. They're so good. Like I mostly, to be honest, I was mostly used to go there just to eat the food, but like other than like I like the music. Like literally like the wedding lasts from like the afternoon till like 6 a.m. and everybody's still dancing and like jumping around, and like there's like always like most of the weddings, I don't know why, there's always like a camera that like passes by you every time you're eating. It's like your mouth is so full, just like a camera next to you out of nowhere. And also like the clothing is like my favorite because like every time I go to Morocco, my grandma comes to visit, like she always brings me like 5 dresses that I never wear, but like I wear them at 2 a.m. out of nowhere because I want to.
Adding on to the wedding thing really quickly, I go to a lot of Middle Eastern weddings because I have a lot of Middle Eastern cousins. I am one of 35 cousins on my mother's side, and they're all older than me and getting married. And there'll be some really fun traditions, like, I don't know if any of you ever heard of like a knife dance. And it's just like, it's so just not a boring wedding, and like the fashion and the food, it's like all, there's literally not a boring second ever. And if it's not like excitement or like an activity, it's organized chaos and like just the best part.
I want to mention the fact that these weddings like last a whole day. Like, no, like I would be in a wedding in Egypt too, and I would like sleep for 5 hours on like 2 chairs, and wake up and people are still dancing. And like, where do they get this energy? Like, God knows. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
That's so.
Oh, sorry. Oh, you can go.
That's so true because I have experienced that. You know, sleeping, waking up, still partying. So that's very true. And the different countries in the Middle East are very, very rich in culture and have a lot of like deep history that we're all so different, yet like connected. And there's just a lot of culture, and that culture, none of it is the same from like all the countries. They're all so unique, and I'm really proud to be like a part of that.
Yeah, and also like what I like is that like how each like Middle East country kind of share their culture with like each other. They don't like gatekeep. They just like like everyone like shows their culture to the others, and sometimes it's like so good. I just love that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree too. And like there are like so many just like cultural, like not really like traditions, but just like things people do that like are just like, it's just so funny to see, like it's just like so fun to like be a part of it. Like around like my family, like there's literally never like a dull moment. Like they are literally nonstop talking nonsense and like it's just like, and like they like have like their own like little like cultural like quirks that they do, and like it's just fun to like belong to something like that. But also like there are also a lot of things that like can be said about a lot of parts of Middle Eastern culture, like the thing with like the grandmothers, and like I'm sure a lot of people can relate to like their parents bringing like cut fruit to their rooms. Yeah. And like so it's just like there's just so much to like connect to other people about, which is really nice.
About gatekeeping, I just want to mention something. So falafel originated in Egypt, and everyone has to accept that because it's true.
Oh yeah. Sorry. So I think going with all the stuff about like never a dull moment, I think that like the holidays especially, just all the celebrations and just being able to really be around family and friends, and I think all of that is definitely my favorite part. Like being able to share my culture with, I mean, usually we have friends over who may not understand anything about our culture, and just being able to share it with people. And I think that that's really my favorite part. Just all the, we have songs, and the food is amazing. Like just all these other things that I think really make me enjoy my own culture.
Mine would also definitely have to be the food. Like over the summer, I went to Lebanon and Dubai, but like there was at one point like I had in one hand like a shawarma, and then the other hand like a big like leg of a chicken, and yeah, you could tell I really missed the food, but yeah.
I think like one, this ties back to misconceptions, but something I'm proud of. I'd say is like the hospitality of the people. And I know you might say like, oh, like you can't say, like you're Arab, this is being a hypocrite, I guess. Like you can't say that about yourself, like everyone would say that. But it's like the whenever you go to like someone's house, you go to someone, your friend, your neighbor, your family, whatever, they like shove food in your face. I'm not kidding. Like you name it, you have it. Like they'll shove like fruit and stuff and like water and nuts, you name it.
Yeah, like I literally go to my grandparents' house. Oh my god, I literally remember once my grandma made me eat almost the whole table. 'Cause I was like 7, but it was good. It was worth it. Yeah, and also like when it comes to like sometimes we're like there's like cultural like a lot of cultural similarities like especially between Morocco and Algeria. We have like the same dish but kind of different stuff. It's still the same dish called couscous, and like every time I go on my phone and I see it, like both countries fighting over whose couscous it is. Like it's literally the same thing, and we also like kind of speak the same language and not like the same dialect, but not really.
About the hospitality thing, a good example would be this morning. We had a C Block speaker. Her name was Jenna Amin. I'm sure you guys saw that. When she Ubered here from Cambridge, and like all of us were like, no, we're gonna drive you, and we kind of like low-key forced her until she was like, no, never mind. So definitely hospitality is definitely a big thing.
I have not had the pleasure of going to a Middle Eastern wedding, but I have heard so many good things. I'm the oldest cousin, so mine will probably be the first. But my favorite thing is definitely the food and also the language. Like, it's so fun when I can talk to my mom in Arabic in front of like a big crowd of Americans and they won't understand a single thing.
Kind of tying back to the hospitality, I think, like in absence of like quote unquote legitimate family, like blood relatives, the kind of community we've created is, like, you know, people just drop in at random times. Like I was driving by. Is it all right if I stay for 7 hours? You know, that kind of stuff.
All right, so we're going to move on to our submitted questions. So the first one is, many panelists have spoken of losing a language that is closely tied to their identity. What was that experience like? So for those on the panel who have lost a language that was closely tied to their identity, what was that experience like?
So with my experience, I go once every year for around a month back to Israel, and so just not really being able to understand a portion of like what's being said with my younger cousins, and like I feel like that I can feel a little bit of like a bit of a disconnect, which definitely makes me sad. Like I really want to try and get back to learning Hebrew. I mean, I know a bit, but like I feel like that definitely is saddening to me, of not being able to really have a full-on conversation when I want to.
I'm just going to use this. Yeah, okay. So for me personally, it's I think the right word for me is like annoying, because there are so many like upsides to like having a second language behind you. One of them being speaking that language behind other people's backs so you can gossip about them. Which, I mean, half works for me because I can receive that information, but I also can't then transport that information, which I guess is good, but then I also can't gossip myself. But it's been really annoying because both my parents speak it fluently, like legit my entire family, even my younger cousins know how to speak because their parents have put them in Armenian programs and into Armenian school for longer periods of time than I have. But for me, like speaking another language is like how I want to keep my identity, and that's just hasn't been the like it hasn't been the that's what it hasn't been for me. But yeah, I think just like having just a second language behind you that you're fluent in and very comfortable in, and it's like what you speak with your family is like super, super important. But I just don't have that, and that's been just like a big struggle. And I haven't really found a way to like start relearning that like we'll have that like familial like home aspect, because like really the only other way is like, I don't know if Duolingo has it, or like like it's really hard to find a way to start relearning your home language when your parents are like speaking both in Armenian and in English, but mainly in English, and they don't really have a drive to want to teach you, because English right now, like being in America, is like that is the language to know, and that is the language of business here, and it's really hard to like try to find that fire again to like start that.
I definitely agree, but I also think it can be really, really invalidating to hear someone say, oh, like you're, whatever you are. And they ask, oh, do you speak, Farsi, Arabic, anything? And I can't. And even though some of my family, or all my family does, like it can be really tough to hear someone say, oh, and then just like end it there, because it's not really, like I do my best and I try to get into the conversation if I can. But I also think like separate from that, I think a lot of people think it doesn't make you like a real Middle Eastern person, but I also think I can be really invalidating to myself, because I'm like, why can't I just learn this? Like it's not that hard. I took French in high school. Why can't I figure this out? And so I think then I was really nervous to come on the panel today, because I was like, I don't think that I'm a real, I don't think that it's fair for me to come up here if I can't, like that's not, you don't want to feel that way about yourself, but I think that's common for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that because I can really connect to that. Like the amount of people, like my parents, their friends or whatever, that like they've introduced me to, the amount of like Arabic they just start speaking to me, I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying. So it's really the feeling is like it's not embarrassment, but I don't know what to call it, because you shouldn't feel embarrassed because it's not like your fault or something. It's just I never learned. So it's this weird feeling that you feel, and I mean personally, like I really want to learn Arabic. I want to learn French because that's a second language in Lebanon too, and it's something I really want to learn, and I try to understand. I mean, my parents, my dad, he sometimes says like a couple things to me. I mean, not like long sentences, but like some phrases and stuff, and I start picking up on it, but it's difficult.
Like I used to be able to like understand Farsi, but then like as I grew up, I was like kind of embarrassed to speak it, and then I just kind of lost it, and like that kind of like made me feel like, it like I was disconnected from parts of my family that only spoke Farsi, so that in itself was like, it's not great. And then it's like, because I don't know Farsi, and like it, and because I like have never really been to Iran, like I kind of joke about like being like the world's worst Persian, which is like not a great way to feel about yourself. It's just like, it's a joke, but it's like also part of it does kind of feel true, because it's like I feel like I can't connect to the culture as much.
Yeah, also like I don't know, but like the countries that like speak Arabic, as I said before, each of them has a different dialect, and you can't like just learn it off like Duolingo or something, because the only Arabic is like kind of like the main one. It's kind of old. It's like if you just learn the main Arabic with someone from like a different country, it's like basically a Gen Z person talking to George Washington. That's how it feels. Like it's really just so. I would understand how like the only chance you can like get to speak is kind of just like hear your family as you're growing up, but they don't, so it's not really your fault.
I think a lot of it comes down to adapting to, the main language that is where you're living. And that's completely normal. And especially if you're trying to learn a language and that language isn't that much in your environment, it's really difficult to do that. And also like, I guess I now feel lucky. I never really thought about it, but I feel lucky that I speak and know Farsi with my parents, and I'm more than happy to teach anybody. It would be fun, but it's completely like it's normal, and it all goes back to history, because if everybody really held on to every single language that ever was like hundreds of years back, it would be too much, and it's all okay. Of course, I understand it's hard.
In terms of like the like Arabic dialects and stuff, I just want to let everyone know that everyone, like in Arab countries at least, we write differently. Like there's something called Fusha, or like standard Arabic, that she calls Old Arabic. That's used across the whole region. However, every single country, we speak a different dialect, and these dialects can't be taught. Like, for example, I'm Egyptian, I speak an Egyptian dialect. I learned it from my parents, I didn't learn it in school. So learning another dialect like Moroccan, for example, I cannot do that, right? And neither can she, or at least she can understand a bit. She can understand a bit, okay. Yeah.
I think when I was younger, I used to know Urdu. And then as I grew older, because part of my family is Pakistani, and then as I grew older, I just completely forgot all of it. And so that kind of makes me feel it's really upsetting, because I feel like I should be able to speak this. I should be able to communicate with that part of my family, but just over time, it just isn't there anymore. And I can't, it's really aggravating and annoying that I can't figure it out.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I'd like to add on that. I downloaded Duolingo. It is very hard to learn Arabic on there. For example, like my mother, so she grew up and there's like Arabic classes in her school, because she grew up in Kuwait and France. But I think 11 years of Arabic classes, she didn't really learn much, but then she moved to Lebanon, she was living there, she was speaking. I mean, that's a general consensus with a lot of languages, but just like Arabic in specific, like 11 years, you think you'd know a little bit, but like she didn't know a lot, but she learned everything basically from just living in Lebanon for a couple of years.
So if you're in the audience and you have a question, raise your hand. We have mic runners like that are going to answer, like get your questions to the panelists. But in the meantime, we have more from the Google form. So when it comes to the arts, what do you guys think is the most important part of your culture, like music, theater, etc.?
I think we kind of all agreed on this before, but like music is, I think, one of the biggest parts of being Middle Eastern and being from that part of the world. No matter what household you're in, and especially in older generations, that's all you hear is like music from the homeland, you know, as some people call it. But like especially at like weddings, that's when the people get the most rallied up, and that's when the people their pride really shows out, when they get to just like vibe and do whatever to like, for me specifically, like Armenian music, and they start throwing the groom like up in the air and doing whatever. But like that's when the culture like really shines through, is when like music is around. And I think music is a really huge and sacred part of a lot of cultures in the Middle East. So definitely, like, I think within the arts, that, and also rugs. Rug making is huge. Like, I have little mouse pads that are Armenian rugs. Like, that's how much people in the Middle East love freaking rugs. But the thing is, like, they're so pretty and like so intricately made, and like so much thought and effort is put into making rugs. Like, it's like when you go to the Middle East, or like when you go to like these different places that like are involved with the Middle East, there is a rug involved somehow, and there's rug memorabilia that you can buy. Like, it's insane. But definitely like music and like rugs specifically, I think, are huge.
Adding on the rugs thing, so I don't know if anyone else, we have a rug on our wall. Does anybody else have that? Yeah. Okay. It's like, I don't know, very like, it's less of like a thing you throw on the floor, like under the table, and like more of like some sort of like artistic expression and exhibit and display for people to see. Yeah.
No, so I don't know if like you guys have that, but in my house, like in Egypt and here, we have like this like super fancy like French furniture set that no one is allowed to sit on it. Only the guests are allowed to sit on it, and if you sit on it, your mom's gonna get the what we call a ship or the flip flops, and hit you with it, because no one's allowed to sit on there ever. Like in Egypt, I've lived in Egypt for 10 years. We have one of those, and I've only sit 2 times, right? So it's so weird.
Also, like, yeah, like the fancy cups and plates. Yeah, my mom would not let me touch those. But also, like, when it comes to music, like, when, like, as you said, like, families, like, they always play it. And, like, during celebrations, like, I woke up, like, at 5 a.m. and my mom was blasting music. And she was, like, making, like, this breakfast thing, you know, like, I ate breakfast. Yeah. She was like playing music, and like every time we have like a guest that's not from Morocco, she still plays Moroccan music, and they're like a full volume. I'm like, they like the guest is so confused.
I think this is similar to like the, again, not the rug thing, but we have like obviously the furniture that no one sits on, but like it's sometimes like our house, and this might, I think this is like an every mom kind of thing, but our house, like if you walk in and there's no one like physically standing there, you would think we don't live there, because even if like my sister who's in college, she comes over, like the house has to be spotless, and it's like it's a whole day affair, and she'll cook. It's like we're having a party, and it's we're getting ready for my sister to come home, and like I don't think she notices. But it's also, we have like this one cabinet of like fine china that I don't think has been opened, touched, used. I don't think water has ever seen the inside of a glass in there. So we have that. But just back to the music thing, I think whenever I'm with my cousins, like we always play our own music, and the first song or whatever, like we always kind of agree on. But I think there are certain phrases that are said in songs that are like applicable in conversation all the time. And so like I'm sure a lot of you know the term habibi, but like maybe the most used word in some songs. But and I think a lot of the songs are almost similar to spoken word too. And they're very poetic, and it's, you know.
Also, like, have your like mom or parents ever told you to clean your room? The guests are coming. Like the guest is about to open my room and just look around.
Talking about like the cabinet of like fine china, I kind of have that. I'm gonna bring up the subject of tea, which I think, yeah, everybody drinks their tea, I guess. But we have like this like big cabinet of just like tea stuff. Call it that. We never use it, but it's just there. I think we have 2 now actually. But my parents do drink tea like a ton. But it's very interesting how we do not touch that one.
Oh yeah. So like I don't know if this is the same in other like ethnic groups and whatnot, but like we, and I'm sure we kind of like established that we have 2 living rooms. Basically, we have our everyday living room, and we have the living room that is just for display. It is the place where like, I mean, I don't really have the whole like the like really expensive furniture set of like couches and whatnot, but like they're like just slightly like slightly more expensive and just slightly better looking, and that's where like all of the like Armenian books and all of the Bible stuff is like kept, and like that's where our piano is. But the thing is, like, no one is allowed to just like hang out in that room. It's just there. And with the whole thing, like what Ava was saying with like clean your house, it's a whole day thing. I thought that was just me. Like I thought like my mom, she like, I can't have friends over unless the day before we like cleaned our house. Yes, and I have to tell, like, I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm bringing a friend over. She's like, no, you're not. The house isn't clean. The house is, it's a huge mess. And I'm like, you have your purse on the dining room table. It's not that much of a mess. And the whole thing with the like cleaning your room, the guests are coming. It is like every single floor of the house has to be clean if just my cousins are coming over. It is in like it. I thought that was just a me thing, but I'm so glad it isn't. It like it's insane, and like everything has to be clean. Laundry has to be completely done. Everything has to be out of sight. Like the counters have to be just completely empty. Nothing's supposed to be on them. Like no paperwork, no taxes, nothing. Like no one can see anything that goes on in our lives, which like whenever I go to other people's houses, I'm like, Mom, when I go to like my friend's house, it's like they have their shit all over their all over their tables, like the food is out, whatever, and she's like, no, everything has to be put away, and it's like insane.
All right, so the block is over. Do you want to?
Yeah, thank you so much to all of our panelists. Yeah.
Bye.
You guys were so good. But we made it just as the bell rang, so like it's okay.